Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review is brought to you in part by Dean's Hobby Stop in Owasso, Michigan. Dean's has one of the Midwest's largest selections of used kits at great prices. They also feature new kits and supplies as well. Call Dean's to get their mail order list featuring hundreds of vintage kits, or check their website for great deals on both new and classic models. This review covers the 29 Model A 2-in-1 Roadster kit in 1/25th scale from Revell. It's number 85-4463. Now, after World War II, the old Fords were commonly used to create what were known as hot rods, and you could see them everywhere. Lightweight and cheap, they were fitted with V8 engines, providing plenty of power to the wheels. Now, this kit was originally issued in 2015 and then reissued in 2020. It builds into a highboy or a channeled hot rod. Now, we're also going to use for this model a ProTech aftermarket wire distributor and some accessories to help the engine detail, and also some flame decals from the spare parts box. There's 149 parts in the kit. They're molded in white, chrome, and clear with vinyl tires and water slide decals. When you're done, the kit will measure about 5 3/4 inches long, 3 inches wide, and about 2 1/4 inches high. Oh, hey, I think I hear Newt. He's the program director back there. Keeps me on track. He's looks like this one's caught his eye.
Totally awesome. I love these kits because that's my idea of a fun time.
I have to agree with you, Newton. Who wouldn't love going down the road in one of those hot rods? And so here are the contents of the kit. As you can see, there's 2 frames there, which correspond to the 2 different versions you can build. Now, that means you're going to have extra parts when you're done. But we'll be using mostly liquid cement, and sometimes, of course, white glue for the windows, or a clear glue, and even sometimes some super glue for the smaller parts. Remember to heed the manufacturer safety and use guidelines when you see or hear any of the products used in the review. Now, what you'll see throughout the instructions are these little triangles that indicate which version you're going to build. You either pick A or B and stick with that, because sometimes the parts aren't interchangeable, and if you install them, it may run into trouble later. Now, look the instructions over carefully ahead of time to understand where the model is going. Here are the decals for the kit. You can see the big white wall decals there, and they are very nice. All the rest are actually pretty good register, and they are pretty thin, so they'll come off the paper easily. Just use plenty of warm water. You may need some setting solution, but probably not. They're pretty good decals in this kit. We'll also be using these parts from ProTech. That's an aftermarket company that makes some excellent additional parts for your detailing, so look for those when we get to the distributor section. The kit comes with a small block Chevy engine, and either you can add 3 carbs or a blower. And to begin, just glue the halves of the engine together. The block is painted Chevy orange and the transmission aluminum. After that's dried, we're going to paint the heads the same Chevy orange red, and then we're going to add these pieces, including the oil and transmission pans as well. Paint the starter semi-gloss black with some aluminum ends and a gold solenoid. I used the Tribe Car setup for my motor, so the 3 chrome-plated air cleaners there. The carbs are painted a gold tone, and the intake is aluminum. Just as a reminder, you got to scrape the chrome or paint off of any surface you're going to glue together. And we're going to assemble the rest of these pieces here by adding the intake and the front cover and the alternator. Just remember to get that paint scraped off so that you get a good bond. Paint the fan belts a flat black and the pulleys a semi-gloss black, and install that to the front engine. And now we'll get to that ProTech distributor kit, and we're going to actually drill the holes out just a little deeper to get a little more depth when we place the wires. And then we're going to use the coil spark plug wires and the boots, and we're going to assemble all of those giving some added detail to the engine. You can see the length of the wires we're going to cut here, and we're going to use those. But then first use a number 75 drill bit to add some depth there in that cap, and then paint that flat black. Then the wires, there's 9 of them, cut those to about 2 inches long. So use a small dab of super glue to attach the wires to the distributor cap, and then the distributor cap onto the base of the distributor. Now these parts are resin and aluminum, so you can't use regular tube glue on them. Shown are the kit's parts also, and the Protec distributor completed. And now you can see that hole at the back end of the carbs there, and that's a 1/16 drill bit which was used to drill that hole to accept the distributor. And next up, we're going to glue the valve covers and the headers, and make sure that those headers are symmetrical on each side as far as elevation and angle. The engine then is complete, and the instructions show the headers being added later, but they can be glued on now so that they'll be dry by the time the engine is added to the frame. The right side of the engine is shown here, and here's the back end and the front end, so that you get a good idea of where all the pieces are located and how they will look. Now the chassis frames are different. The highboy version is based on a 32 Ford style frame with the body mounted on top of the frame, and the channeled version uses a modified Model A frame with the floor raised inside the body to lower the body over the frame. So to begin the chassis, glue the cross member in place and then paint the frame gloss black. Next, glue the floor to the frame there, and then we're going to add the tailpipes. And if you're building the channeled version, study the instructions regarding the installation of those tailpipes. On the channeled version, it's a bit tricky to get in place, but the instructions are pretty clear as you see here, and install them in step 5. So the underside of the floor gets painted a body color, which I used a one-shot brand emerald green number 142L. Next, scrape the paint off the mounting points. You see the motor mounts there on the inside of the frame up front, and it goes in, and the battery box and the fuel tank get installed this time, but those parts aren't visible when the kit's completed, so I saved them and put them in my parts box. They're nicely detailed, so it's just up to you. And now we can add the pipes that connect the headers, the bypass pipes there, to the tailpipes. They get attached now, and they were painted silver. Now we can add the differential to the rear axle there, and go ahead and scrape that glue off, or paint off, and glue them together. And I painted those silver. And then next we're going to add the parts to the frame. The drive shaft, completed rear axle, and the coil-over shocks get installed now. And now we can turn our attention to the wheel assemblies, and these nice-looking tires are well detailed, except they have no sidewall branding. However, they do have some nice decals. Of course, the skinnies go up front, and the fatter ones go in the back. And we decided to install those, even though maybe those kind of tires didn't necessarily have wide sidewalls. But we put them on anyway because they look great. And they're very nice decals. They're easily applied, and they didn't really require any setting solution. So just sandwich the pieces together and put those great looking spinners in place. Assemble the parts for the front axle, and you see that tiny little tie rod there. You're going to do your best to clean up with a sharp hobby knife the locating points, and we'll probably use some super glue to attach those later. Now here's a diagram so you get a better idea of that construction. But go ahead and assemble that and let it dry. So here's the completed front assembly with some of the trailer bars, for the rear. And we're going to put that rear axle into place with the rear trailing bars attached then. And then the exhaust extensions are ready to go on. And so here you see the front axle in place on the frame. And the left shock and the left radius rod there are in place, and the right parts are not yet put into position. So you can see where those go. Here is the grill shell and the radiator, and paint the radiator a semi-gloss black and use some flat black on the grill portion. So here is the completed shell and radiator with the upper and lower radiator hoses. Paint those flat black. Now the radiator hoses are put into place, and the steering column then is positioned, and the shifter, pedals, and the rear brake backing plates are ready to be glued into place too. In this next step, we're going to glue the firewall to the cowl. So after prepping the body and the light coat of primer had dried, I put on the emerald green one-shot paint there, and then when that was fully cured, I added some pinstripe decals and those big flames on the side from my parts bin. I painted the interior panels an off-white there, and I added the insert decals into place. They're really thin and they laid down really nice to show the tuck and roll detail. I didn't even need setting solution there. After the decals have dried, you can go ahead and install those into the body shell. The dash gets painted body color, and you see the instrument cluster there. We're going to scratch a little glue and chrome from that and put that into position. And when you go to put the body into place, make sure you locate those positions properly, and to make sure that you get some good strong glue to keep that into place. I found that the dash needed a little bit of trimming. The ends of the dash have to be trimmed off a little bit to fit into the inner panels there. So here is an illustration that shows you about what I did and how much I took off. But you're going to want to test fit that. And so now with the dash in place, assemble that steering column. And of course it's got some flat black rim, and it was chrome. So go ahead and put that into position. And the shifter goes into place there, even though we know it's an automatic. Nobody else can tell from this angle. So go ahead and assemble that now. It's a good time to go ahead and press those wheels into position. I always glue mine. I guess that's something that's up to you, but I always glue them so that it won't roll off the shelf. And so the tail lights, bezels, and the plate holder there gets put into place now. Scrape the chrome off of those headlight bezels and mounts, and go ahead and put those into position along with the lenses, and glue those into place with some of that white glue or clear glue. The windshield on these types of vehicles are always difficult to put into position. I used some sparingly amounts of tube glue on the mounting surface on the underside there, because white glue wouldn't hold it. And so I laid a small amount of tube glue there around the frame, and just let it kind of soften the plastic and start to get tacky. Then carefully put the glass frame into position on the body. As you can see here, there's an abundance of parts left over, and a lot of decals too for your parts stash. So don't be ashamed of that. You paid for the kit, so put them in your stash. Now there's especially no hard parts or difficult things in this build. It was really a nice model, but because of the small parts and the decals, I would recommend it for a more advanced builder. But anybody with a dozen kits under their belt should have no problems putting this together. Now you may have noticed this is an old traditional style hot rod, but it does use some late model parts like the automatic transmission and the coil-over rear springs, but don't let that keep you from putting this great-looking little kit on your shelf. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you liked this step-by-step model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our reviews, and you can find us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.